Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. We do apologize that we're starting the big conversation a few minutes later than the scheduled time. But of course, we're here ready for the conversation, and you're watching the Rapid Done right here on Rapid Television. My name is Victor Arke.
And my name is Martha Alu. Of course, it's the big conversation. And at 9 o'clock, what we do is try to spotlight some of the key issues in the Nigerian economic, political, social sector. And today we go again talking about one of the latest developments. This happened, I think, on the 16th of September.
Right.
One of the latest developments in the Nigerian sector. Now, when I saw that, I said, it's a welcome development. Again, if you are new here or you have been riding with us on Rapidon, you know one thing that we constantly will say is it's not about the introduction of these policies, it's about the implementation of the policies. Now, when we have policies that are targeted towards alleviating the suffering of the common man, it's important that we put people who are very particular or people who are concerned about alleviating the suffering for the common man.
Right.
Now, it is sad to say that we have certain people who, because they have it good on certain levels, it becomes irrelevant to talk about some certain areas. Now, not because they are wicked people, but because it's not a reality that they kind of relate to. It's not a reality that they are very conversant with. So it's important while setting up these policies, we also set up committees of people who are aware of some of the things that you are trying to address. And today we have another initiative by the federal government.
All right, talking about the federal government's announcement, talking about a big change in how farmers and landowners we do businesses right here in Nigeria. And first of all, they said that on land registration, you know that before now, if you wanted to register your land, you had to run from one office to the other.
Absolutely.
Which of course was very stressful. Surveyors, you get to surveyor's office, you get to a land registry ministry, you know, and all of that, just keeping moving from point one to point two. But the federal government has said, well, at this point in time, it's a different way on how you get to do that now. They said, of course, they created a new format on how you can register your land as a farmer right here in Nigeria.
And registration of these lands are very important, especially when we're trying to come up some of the irregularities that we see in the system. Now, we have had a lot of losses by farmers. I think one of the interviews, maybe not being published yet, but one of the interviews we had with a farmer at the time was talking about how he was farming cattle, or he was rearing cattle and what have you, and then certain farmers or certain herdsmen came into the farm and destroyed everything in the farm. Let's say, we also know that, of course, there's a government body that is responsible for insuring crops and insuring cattle, which a lot of Nigerians are not even conversant with in the first place. But I think that this new development makes it easy to track or have access to some of these farms,
right,
to find out where the problem is coming from. So let's say we hear that there is a cattle farmer herder clash on a certain farm. The government now has an accurate data on which part of the country this has happened, where it has happened, and if at all they want to give compensation to these people, they know exactly who to give compensation to. You know, compensation in this part of the world used to be very haphazard, and we have talked about it here many times, where let's say there's a certain level of damage that has been done to a community, there's a farmer herder clash, we don't have accurate data of the people's products that have been affected, the farmlands that have been raided and destroyed. So if, say, interventions want to come from the federal government, they give it to the entire community of people because there is no data. So now that the government is working towards having data where these farmlands are now registered, farmers are now under a certain level of protection, I would assume, a certain level of protection by the federal government where your farms are registered. Maybe insurance will follow afterwards, but it's important that we have data, accurate data on all of these things. So now, if this farm is producing 20 tubers of yam, we know that, okay, this particular farm is producing 20 tubers of yam. This farm is producing this. We have the largest number coming from this area. What is happening to the other areas that are not producing this yam? What can we do to ensure that we work on the land or work on the people from this region? If we must mitigate food crisis, we must prioritize data. And this is why this, I would say, is a welcome development.
Definitely. And of course, the second thing that the federal government is trying to do is talking about agricultural credit. Farmers have always complained that it is hard to get loans or even financial support. Banks will ask for too many documents, while government credit schemes are scattered. Now, the new plan is to put it all in one system, talking about data, so that farmers can easily apply and access credit without the usual bottlenecks. According to them, the idea is simple. Make land easier to own, make credit easier to access, and of course, make farming more productive. Well, the federal government right now believes that this will attract more private investment into agriculture, boost food production, and as well create jobs. But here's the catch. It will only work if the platforms are user-friendly, corruption-free, and accessible in both cities and rural areas. Because, of course, if you look at it, a lot of times, those in the urban areas are the ones who get to enjoy most of these initiatives and intervention that the federal government brings on board. And those in the rural areas kind of suffer from it because they are not, they are not privy to some of the technologies and, of course, the website that the federal government has brought on board.
All right. Yes, and just to give an overview of what this is about, this was introduced by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu through his Vice President Kashim Shettima. And I must comment that he's starting to appear in a lot of the news right now, as opposed to when we talked about him not being like AWOL, missing in action.
Yeah.
We didn't see him anywhere. But when it comes to agriculture, I see him championing a lot of initiatives, and kudos to him on that one. But yes, the federal government introduced a single window platforms for registration and agricultural credit as part of Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda.
Right.
He has tried to do housing, he has tried to do different areas, and now to agriculture. Now, this whole idea aims to streamline processes, as you explained, enhance access to capital for farmers, and both boost mechanization and expand irrigation to significantly increase Nigerians' food production capacity. Now, the key aspects of the initiatives are three. First is single window platforms, where we have a streamlined platforms where, we have access to this farmers' data, establishing a single window to simplify and improve efficiency of land registration and access to agricultural credit. So that is basically about collating the data of these farmers and having accurate data of them. So if they are trying to access credit, you know who and you know what farmer, you know what is being produced right there. The second is agricultural credit system. Now, this is such The agricultural credit system is such an important credit system. And this is because a lot of farmers, right? We have a lot of these villages or these communities. We're talking Benue State now that has high production of food, food crops. We're talking about tubers of yam. We have places like Jos that has a lot of production of vegetables as well. Now, if we have an agricultural credit system that can enable these farmers, they already have arable lands, they already have fertile ground where they can plant this. Some of them do not have the capital to start the business or to start to plant these crops effectively. If they have an efficient agricultural credit system, some of these farmers who have the knowledge and are willing to be accountable can access this credit.
Definitely.
And then start to supply farm produce. Now, we also have mechanization and irrigation. Remember, we're talking about, on the green line, you'd hear conversations that was being repeated time and again about mechanization of farming. We're talking about insecurity in the farm. And if we must mitigate food insecurity and the challenges that we face in the agricultural sector, one of the major things we must learn to do is to work smarter, to find smarter ways to indulge in agriculture or to engage in agriculture. The agricultural ecosystem is such a vast system where when we say agriculture, people just think about planning, but there are tech giants in the agricultural sector. You see people that can develop machines that can enable us to work smartly. Again, I used an example the last time where I said, if we have big machines that are fast, efficient, we will maybe finish all of our agricultural activities before the bandits or the headers or whoever comes to the farmland, which is one thing that I have recounted over and again. But one of the aspects of this initiative is basically mechanization and irrigation. It also includes plans to drive mechanization to reduce manual labor. If we don't have enough manpower, we can substitute the number of people we use by having sufficient equipment and effective equipment. So if we are supposed to harvest like 3 ridges, or how it's being called, right? We have a machine that can do 5 all at once. So you would not need 5 people on the farmland to harvest 5 ridges, right? You can use 1 machine to harvest 5 ridges. So I think it's a smarter and easier way to get things done. I think we have the video.
Yeah, we have a video. Let's listen to the Vice President tell us more about this whole initiative.
Bola Tinubu's administration is introducing single window platforms for land registration, strengthening agricultural credit systems, expanding irrigation infrastructure, and scaling mechanization. Shettima said this in Abuja during the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations National and Sub-Regional Hand-in-Hand Investment Forum. The Vice President also assured investors that Nigeria's policies are being re-engineered to attract capital through regulatory reforms, public-private partnerships, and agri-tech innovation.
This blueprint seeks to lift 35 million Nigerians out of poverty, to create 21 million full-time jobs in rural and agrarian communities, and to secure national food and nutrition sufficiency through deliberate and strategic investments in agriculture. Nigeria is indeed open for business, and we are ready to partner with you. Let us work hand in hand to build a Nigeria and a sub-region where no one goes to bed hungry, where rural communities are hubs of wealth creation, and where agriculture is the true foundation of our prosperity.
Earlier, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, highlighted key challenges and potential for investment across the agribusiness value chain.
Our task here is clear: to present concrete, bankable opportunities in agriculture and irrigation that are ready for investment.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Atiku Bagudu, said the economic potential of Nigeria remained largely untapped, especially in agriculture and irrigation.
Pursuant to Mr. President's directive and your own initiatives and leadership, we are interrogating both the absorptive capacity and drawing attention to the investment that is required in both Nigeria's agriculture and irrigation space.
For his part, the Minister of Agriculture, Livestock and Food Security of the Gambia commended the FAO for hosting the event and Nigeria's leadership in agriculture.
We must acknowledge the success story of Nigeria in your rice value chain, and I think this has not gone unnoticed, what Nigeria has done in the shortest possible time in rice and, of course, also in cassava and other value chains.
The representative of the Food and Agricultural Organization in Nigeria and ECOWAS said the Hand-in-Hand initiative is FAO's evidence-based, country-led, and country-owned flagship program.
Today,
And of course, right now, moving to the report as well that the NBS has just released, talking about the Q2 2025 GDP report. And the truth is, the numbers are looking quite stronger than expected. Now, the Nigeria's economy grew by 4.23% in real terms, up from 3.13% in Q1. That is also higher than the 3.48% recorded in the same quarter last year. And the big question I will be asking about this growth, talking about the growth in agriculture and the oil-producing economy, is that the oil sector rather bounced back with an impressive 20.46% surge, and thanks to increased crude oil production, averaging about 1.68 million barrels per day. But that's not the whole story. Agriculture also rebounded with 2.82% growth. Industries doubled to 7.45%, while services maintained steady output at 3.94%. In terms of weight, services still lead the pack at over 56% GDP, followed by agriculture at 26% and industries at 17%. But the big question we're asking today is, how sustainable is this growth? Can agriculture and industries continue to drive productivity even as oil stabilizes? And what does this mean for jobs, for food security, and everyday Nigerians? And right now, to help us unpack all of this conversation, we are being joined by Damian Odo, an agro expert, who's going to help us break down the numbers and tell us what these numbers mean for farmers, businesses, and the economy at large. Good morning to you, Mr. Damian.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm always delighted to be here.
Thank you.
So much.
So great to have you here.
Same here.
Now you saw the growth in the GDP for
Yes.
agriculture.
Yes.
When you saw that, what was your first reaction?
So I was excited. I mean, even driving down here this morning, I was thinking about those numbers and what those numbers mean for our food systems, mean for our food system actors, and for everyday people, all right, at home who get to buy food. And it's quite interesting, right? Number one, you have agriculture. I mean, the Q2 reports that you referenced from NBS.
Yeah.
For 2025, agriculture growth 2.82%. Agriculture now contributes over about 26.17% overall GDP.
Right.
Those numbers are very, very exciting. Something that is more exciting is what the impact of those numbers, what it means for everyday people, right? So what does this mean for me and you at the market? Every time there's increase in production, right? And then, okay, something else to couple this with is the recent reduction in MPR. Right, by 50 basis points to now 27%. What that now looks like is matching with this increased yield, agricultural yield, right? Overall, agricultural increase in terms of production means more food, right? Reduced MPR means more money in people's hands.
Okay.
The effect of it, I mean, when it lands, right? But the immediate effect is lower cost of money for businesses, so food processors could borrow money lesser, they could employ more people, right? And then there should be more output in terms of like supply.
Yeah.
Now, why I said it is a good match is because we have increased supply and we have lower MPR, right? Lower cost of money. So that should just translate to more money in people's hands. Where there's more money in people's hands and there's not increased supply, you actually have inflationary risks.
Truly.
Because what that looks like is there's now more money, that means people's purchasing power has increased, but then you don't have as much supply. So fundamentals of supply and demand, it goes back to what that simply looks like is when there's increased demand, increased supply rather, and lower cost of money and more money in people's hands, the economy kind of like stabilizes, deflationary measures kick in, and then we have a good economy. So in the very short term, food prices should reduce. We should have more people being able to afford more food.
Okay.
Long
But,
and short,
but this 4.23% is largely attributed to the rebound in the oil sector.
Yeah.
The growth of the oil sector, that's by 20%,
Yeah.
if I get that correctly. Isn't that a red flag that Nigeria's growth is still heavily dependent on, still vulnerable to global oil shocks? Now, I have statistics here that says that non-oil sector only grew by 3.64%. And if oil falters, can non-oil sectors, can they stand on their own? Don't you think this is a problem still?
Honestly, our economy is very exciting, right? We're still heavily oil dependent as far as like our revenue streams. But other sectors are catching up, like from the reports he referenced, right? Services, manufacturing, agriculture. What we want to do is accelerate the growth rather in agriculture. Right? We want to make sure that we are increasing our investments in agriculture. The MPR reduction actually helps, right? It means more capital directed towards other industries. Truly, capital will move in the direction of profits, all right? So people would invest where they see opportunities. Our previous conversations, remember we talked about how when there's clarity in direction of policy, then more capital could come into the agri space, excuse me. So I think what we'll need to do is just keep, I mean, the guys running things are doing a great job, right? The timing for the reduction in the MPR was just right? I think look at the Q2 reports, like we referenced earlier on. That 2.82% increase in agricultural production is meeting like that stimulant in the reduction in the MPR. So we could actually find accelerated growth in our space. It's still a problem that we're heavily dependent on oil. We need to grow other aspects of our economy. Services, I mean, the US economy is more service heavy than it is, oil heavy. And we can actually get there,
And of course, looking at agriculture being one of the, beautiful places that we can actually grow our economy. How then can we make agriculture a backbone of the Nigerian economy?
I mean, it's the same things we've discussed over and over and over again. We have very consistent blueprints that have been implemented across the world, different nations, right? It's everything from incentivizing the people who play in the space, so our food system actors, farmers, traders, food processors, everybody within the value chain, all right? Providing them, first things first, like we'd always say, clarity in direction, so policy, right? Policy that's directed at very specific outcomes. We want to have more food. We want to be food sovereign. We want to have increased production. We want to make sure that we are having more of the food that is produced gets to the markets. So effective distribution, access to markets, right? So that's once we start investing in those directions, the outcomes would directly, to show, right? Every time we invest more towards any sector, we have very, very real, tangible results to show for it. And this case is not any different.
All right. So what structural reforms must accompany this growth if we want to deepen and sustain them?
Okay, so I think we need to continue along the direction that we're on as far as like the tweaks we're making economically. And of course, monitoring that, making sure that there's real-time tangible growth connected to interest rates, increase, reduction. Those economic levers help. Once those are in place, we're kind of very clear on policy in terms of like clarity around where investment is going and how it should go. And we're directing capital, right, to the different sectors that need, the capital. For the food space specifically, there needs to be more infrastructure, right? We have good infrastructure, but we need more infrastructure. A lot of infrastructure around post-harvest losses to just reduce the losses around post-harvest. Once we're able to get more of what is produced to the markets, right, we're going to have a lot more reduction in food prices. Another core thing we need to take care of is insecurity around primary producers in their localities. Once we're able to fix this bit with security, we would have more farmers on their farms producing food. There's a lot of data around how, a lot of people are not able to create food, produce food rather, because of insecurity. There are also serious issues around sometimes road networks in getting food from where it is produced to where it is needed, right? So if we can be able to fix infrastructure and security, those two key things would kind of move the lever in the right direction, yes.
But with this growth now, do you think the federal government has a target of 70% annual GDP growth by 2027? With this recent growth, and you've been talking about the trajectory of policies that have been implemented in the last couple of months, right? Do you think we're on the right track, and do you think it's achievable, or is merely a fantasy of 7% GDP growth annually?
Anything is achievable, right? Anything is achievable.
Diplomacy.
No. Actually, anything is achievable. So think about it. Like, if we set out to say we want to do this, it's achievable. We just have to kind of like put the things that are needed in place, and then we're going to get it. So it's a national project. It's not just the president saying this is what I want, or a minister saying this is what we are setting out to do. There needs to be that collaboration, that constant, consistent rhythmic dance that happens between the public and the private sector to achieve these goals. And when there's clarity in direction, again, policy, then people are confident in terms of like where they are putting money, right? So it's very, very, very achievable. Is it a lot of work to get there? Yes. Is it a national project? Absolutely, yes. It is, but yes, it's very, very possible to get there.
Give us the time. You know, the last time you gave us tentative, was it the one who gave us
statistics? He wasn't the one.
But give us the statistics.
In terms of time?
Yes.
That'll be hard to put the face. Honestly, very honestly. That's because there's so many moving parts and there are so many actors, right? But again, once we have clarity around direction, clarity in policy, and we have, yesterday I had a opportunity to be at NICEL, and we're talking about de-risking agricultural investments. And every time, which is their mandate, a core part of their mandate, and every time we have, those kinds of initiatives in place, we have NICEL playing their role, we have all the different agencies doing, bodies, right, playing their key roles. The big boys in the banks will actually let the money out, because NICEL is telling you, if you release money, I'm going to cover you up to 75%. That's great, right? So we just need to have every part of the economy actively playing their role. Every part, all the individual parts. You know how systems work, right? Individual parts playing, in a symphony to create this big orchestra that we enjoy, right? Once we have that in place, everybody playing their roles. I can't say 3 months, 5 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, right? Just because, we're playing our own little role in our own corner, right? But then if we take this as a national project and we go at it consistently, we're actually going to get there. I don't have a time stamp. Sorry, I don't, but yeah.
Right. The Dangote refinery actually produces about 650,000 barrels.
Yes, sir.
But in the agri-space, I don't think we have any private individual that refines, foodstuffs, in this large scale as it is. What can be done for this gap to be mitigated? Because it seems like the agro space still depends on the oil and gas industry for them for them to thrive?
Every industry depends on power. Every industry does, right? On the energy industry, on the energy sector rather. Scale is very relative, and when you talk about scale in the agri space, it's developed, right? So very lovely guy, Farmer Samson of Silas Farm Lab says, in the agri space we don't blow, we grow. And that's very, very indicative of the fact that there is very intentional work that goes into developing the systems. And so every time you say we're able to do, say, 650,000 barrels for Dangote, right? That's real-time infrastructure in place that is actually churning all of those numbers out, right? On this end, the way we think about data is from the perspective of people who are actively working out the systems that kind of develop the data that you see on this other end, right? So we would like to think about it is we want to galvanize the capital that is needed to build out the infrastructure, right, as private sector, that would churn out the numbers that we are desirous as far as increased production. But a couple of very good to note is that a couple of very interesting guys are doing great stuff in this space, right? I'd always like to mention them. So there's Afex, of course there's Quicklip, right? There's Thrive, there's Babangona, there's Koamana. A couple of there are a lot of interesting businesses within the agri space who are doing great things. It is all of these efforts put together data kind of like you see on this other back end. Right? Do we need to increase capacity? Absolutely, yes. Are we able to? Of course, there's Tomato Jaws, right? Great companies doing really remarkable things. My friend Jerry Toby has a factory in Nasarawa State, the more spices, and they started out very, very little. And this is the story of almost every other agri-business. They start very, very small with one machinery, then they grow, they increase capacity for production, and then they grow bigger and bigger and bigger. What do they need? They need capital, right? They need that capital. Whether that capital is coming in terms of money, or it's coming in terms of infrastructure, which are machines. And then, of course, we're playing that bit with matching farmers and all of their outputs to all of these factories that are needed, right? So it's just, in the agri space, we grow. We don't blow, right? So we have to be very intentional about, just directing capital to infrastructure or development. Yes.
Now, this initiative that was introduced by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, announced by Kashim Shettima, the Vice President, talking about these three aspects that I was talking about: single window platforms, agricultural credit systems, and mechanization and irrigation. Now, where I want to put more focus on now will be the mechanization. Right. Now, in agri, I think that if we try to hinge on the opportunities that are available to us, especially when it comes to mechanization, we'll be able to produce a lot more. But the truth is, one of the major problems as regards this mechanization is the fact that some of the poor people who are potential harvesters of large number of crops might not have access to these machines that the federal government is proposing. How do you think they should go about reaching out to these farmers? Because when we talk about mechanization again and this initiative by the government, we often look at the people who are already key players in this sector. But just like we had conversations the last time where you said the contribution of these subsistence farmers also play a key role in mitigating food crisis. They are the backbone. How would they have access to some of these things? Or how would you advise the government to go about making sure that all of these things get to the grassroots? Okay,
so I made a couple of systems that already work, right? I typically like to go from what's working to what we need to do. So we already have clusters, right? Farmers already in clusters, and we need to deploy whatsoever it is, whether it's technology or machinery or input distribution or capital distribution, to mirror the organic nature in terms of how they are distributed. So again, I was in Nasarawa, I think 2 months ago, and we're talking about this with Yofin, young farmers in Nigeria. And the conversation was around the distribution of machineries to different local governments, and also distributing that effectively to make sure that it can do the work on everybody's farm. And the challenges they were having was that there was not the ratio of machineries available to the number of farmers and the volume of land that needed to be whether that is whether they are plowing or whatever it is they're doing, whatever the activities on the farm is, was not it wasn't matching, right? So one, we need to have increased investments as far as increased numbers of machines, whether those are tractors or plows or threshers, whatever that is within the spectrum of mechanization. We need to increase our capacity, right? So back to the conversation on infrastructure development, we need to increase that capacity. And then we need to deploy it to clusters, right? So that should be that localization in our outreach. So we're going to, for example, Nasarawa, this particular local government. Of course, according to the demand, right? These are the number of farmers within this. This is the land space that is needed. What is enough? 10 tractors, 15 tractors. We need to have that there. In reality, right now, we don't have those numbers, right? And we need, which is why we're always talking about increased, we have to increase the flow of capital coming towards this place. It is a big win-win for everybody, right? Because more tractors means more drivers for those tractors, so more jobs, right? More land plowed, or whatever the activities needed to happen on that land, which would, directly result in more productivity, increased yield, right? So we just need to drive more capital, right? And then we need to deploy, when we've acquired all of these assets, we need to deploy them locally, just like grassroots implementation to get to all the people who need them.
You made mention of clustering the farmers. Do you think?
I mean, they already exist in clusters, right?
They already exist in clusters, but we're talking about handing this machine over to them in clusters. Do you think it's an efficient?
So we're not handing the machines over to them, right? Typically, the way it works is, there's a company called Hello Tractor. They already have cluster systems working, right? So typically, the way it works is for a particular locality, they have a couple of tractors, so they have like an outreach center. So farmers could come there, write out their names, their farms.
So more like renting it out to the farmers.
Exactly, that's how you do it, right? So you kind of you rent out to them for a particular day or for a particular period of time. I mean, just to get the work done that needs to be done. So you could have, say, 15 tractors plowing, let's say, one local government, large local government. One farmer is farming over 5 acres, another farmer 10 acres, another farmer 15, 20. And then all these different assets just go to their, to their farms and does the work that needs to be done. But once, if, for example, those tractors are not already within their locality, there's a cost of getting it down to that locality, doing that job, going to another local government to do it. We have to take a cluster, maybe local government by local government or cluster by cluster initiative to make sure that we are close to people.
What I was even thinking was, the federal government is going to give the farmers, because according to the report, that's what they plan to do.
Oh, that's remarkable also.
To give these farmers...
Individual farmers, right?
Not individual farmers now. So when I was talking, so when I was talking about the clusters, I'm like, maybe in this local government, we have like 20 to 30 farmers. Small example,
give or take,
right? So we have 2 tractors to give to this local government. So rather than ensuring that there's a system where, there's a local government who's going to take care of it, you can come and rent, just like you explained, then we can share the farmers into, since they're 20,
no, don't give it to the local government, by the way. No, give it to private sector. Right, so it's not like it can actually be deployed correctly.
So private sector is more effective than the local government?
I'm a private sector person. And private sector, obviously, I would lean in more towards having private sector. And we already have people in the private sector doing these things, right? So there's Nimsi Agro who's doing solar dryers and different kinds of machineries powered by solar. There's Hello Tractor who's already deploying tractors to these people. So, their models are work already. So what we want to do is take those models and scale them. If we're giving them to individuals, right? Farmers can be very organized people, right? So typically they organize themselves into cooperatives because there needs to be some system of governance. Why I would say always have private sector units or private organization who's managing that is because then they are incentivized to make sure it works, right? But if it's the farmers themselves, if every farmer getting a tractor, that would be amazing, right?
No, not every farmer.
I know. I was just saying imagine that was the case. That would be amazing, right? Because then you know that you are your own assets. You're responsible for it. But that's not the reality right now. Since it's in clusters, right? There needs to be that governance system because this asset needs to be maintained, right? So there's that bit around maintenance culture. I'm saying private sector is you're vested in making sure that it's well maintained because then you have the government to report to. You have to make money. And of course, these things can come really so expensive to the farmers because anytime you make it more expensive for the farmer, it reflects on the cost we pay on food.
Absolutely. I'm hoping it works because, there's Fadama. It's nowhere now.
So conclusively, what policy would you recommend to the federal government to ensure that agriculture doesn't just grow on papers, but it provides more food for Nigerians and also put more money in the pocket of farmers?
I think let's continue what we are doing with our monetary policy. right? Because then the first driver, when you think about agriculture right now, is that bit with inputs. When you think about inputs, you're thinking about the cost of those inputs, right? So the more interest rates are lower, the cheaper inputs are. I mean, this thing starts from the beginning. When you think about food system designs, architecture, and implementation, you always have to have the right kind of capital for agriculture, right? Many people will still argue with you that 27% is high for agriculture, right? Okay, but then that's what we have right now. So let's keep that going. Second, let's have clarity in direction. I mean, the government is doing a lot of great work around, providing that clarity and speaking more about it through different media. So let's continue having that. Then let's incentivize our farmers, right? Let policy be directed towards directly incentivizing seed producers, so that fertilizer producers, people who do organic farming, let's make sure that they have the right tools, right? Once we kind of like get policy, like clarity around policy around these different areas, we want to actually now direct capital to infrastructure. A lot of food loss still occurs, right? And that's because some of the infrastructure that would help us preserve food is not yet in place, or the ones we have are currently overburdened. So we want to have increased, just increased investment in the direction of infrastructure, and then market linkages. Lastly, that will mean other infrastructure like roads have to be in place. Let's engage more PPP to have railways working, like rail tracks connecting different parts of the country, so that we could have more things, less burden on the road and then more things moving on rail, right? I mean, it's a holistic approach to it, but then these are a few things that we could implement, right?
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Damian.
Thank you.
I appreciate you there.
Thank you, sir.
So this is where we're going to call it a wrap anyways. And our guest has been Damian Odo, an agro-expert. We've been talking about the growth in the agri-GDP. And of course, he concluded by sharing with us some of the policies that the government can adopt to ensure that Nigerians have more food on their table, farmers as well have more money in their pockets. But of course, back to me and Martha in the studio as we call it a wrap this morning. Agriculture is the in thing right now, and some persons will say agriculture is the new oil, as it is. But
it's always been oil, to be honest.
Yeah, to be honest. But at some point, we actually left agriculture for the real oil, But right now, somehow we're going back to agriculture because I think maybe the government is beginning to see that there is something here in agriculture, and if only they can put in the right investment, then the economy of the nation can as well be improved, through agriculture, not just via the oil and gas industry.
I think those that get it. The people who have known this, they know it, and you see them like hell-bent on making sure that the agricultural sector thrives, at least what they do. And I think Nigeria has always been like very strong providers of some of this cocoa. We talked about maize, we talked about nuts. We have these things in large quantities. I think sometimes if Nigeria can just focus on, we want to just export oil. And I'm not talking the PMS crude, now. I'm talking about red oil.
Okay.
Alone.
Okay.
I'm sure that it will contribute a lot. All these things we're saying, the oil and gas contributed to. The only palm oil that we have in this country will be able to do that. Right. And palm oil, palm oil, they say that palm tree never wastes. Never. Down to the last, there's always something you can use it for. Right. It's such an economic tree, and we have a lot of them in Nigeria. I just think it's paying the right attention to these things, adopting the right policies. We can get it right. It's not rocket science, and I know that it's possible. It's just having the people who understand these things better and are willing to see these policies to the last to ensure that they're implemented. But I think we have all that it takes. After my, issues yesterday about the Green Line, I think I might just be going into agriculture. And some of the statistics we shared here today. So we just might be getting into that full time.
All right.
So Victor might just be the real person here next week.
We'll take the show to the farm. But that being said, this is where we call it a wrap on the show this morning. Do remember that you can be part of our conversation every day by following us on our social media pages across all platforms at Rappi TV. And of course, you can rewatch every episode on our YouTube platform, which is at Official Rappi TV. And anywhere you are in the world, you can as well watch us live on our website, www.arabianradiotv.com. I am Victor Ake.
And my name is Martha Alo.
See you tomorrow.